Welcome to the Evolving Performance Podcast. Today I'm excited to welcome Mike Potenza as a guest on the podcast. Mike is currently in his second stint with the San Jose Sharks, serving as the Director of High Performance, where he oversees the strength and conditioning and nutrition staffs and serves as a liaison to the Sharks medical staff to ensure a streamlined collaboration between the performance and medical staffs for both the San Jose Sharks and their AHL affiliate, the San Jose Barracuda. Mike had previously spent 16 years as the head strength and conditioning coach with the Sharks, but returned to the organization after spending 2 years with the Golden State Warriors as their director of performance. In that role, he was responsible for the management of performance testing, implementation of player-specific training programs, and collaboration with the Warriors coaching staff to maximize the efficiency of training and practice schedules. During Mike's tenure in San Jose, he also served as vice president of the Strength and Conditioning Association of Professional Hockey, which has recently transitioned to the Professional Hockey Performance Organization. Mike served in that role from 2015 to 2019 and served as the president of the association from 2019 to 2022. Prior to joining the Sharks organization, Potenza served as the strength and conditioning coach for the University of Wisconsin men's and women's hockey teams, both of which won NCAA national championships in 2006. Potenza also had responsibilities with the wrestling and softball programs at Wisconsin. Away from the rink, Mike worked with the United States Air Force pararescue teams based in California and Alaska, consulting on the implementation and design of their human performance program. Additionally, he's the co-founder of Metabolic Elite, a supplement and education company specifically supporting the needs of high performers. In this episode, we discuss Mike's role as the Director of High Performance, both specifically in terms of his position and more broadly in terms of how staffs have evolved over the course of his career and why these roles have become so important. We talk about what Mike looks for when hiring people for the various roles within the departments he oversees, impactful lessons he learned in his 2 years working in the NBA and how it's changed his approach coming back to San Jose, recovery strategies Mike has found most effective with his athletes, and game day strategies to help maximize player energy and mental focus. Whether you're currently working or aspire to work with professional athletes, or just want to learn more about all the efforts that go into supporting the performance of athletes in a professional setting, this is a great episode that I know you'll enjoy. Before we dive in, I want to thank our sponsor, Metabolic Elite. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I'm a huge fan of Metabolic Elite. The company was founded by James Laval, who is an internationally recognized clinical pharmacist and board-certified clinical nutritionist, to provide supplements and education to help support the health, performance, and recovery of high performers. Each product is formulated using research-supported ingredients and dosages using the highest quality ingredients, so you can be confident that every product you take will deliver the maximal benefit and effect. In the past, I've discussed the benefits of one of my favorite products called Synapsin, which has significant benefits for focus, mental processing, and decision-making, areas of cognition that will not only have an impact on sport performance, but are also beneficial for anyone navigating busy schedules, experiencing poor sleep, or changing time zones. Today, I want to highlight one of my other favorite products, Enduro 2. Enduro 2 uses a compound from rhodiola, which has long been recognized as a powerful adaptogen that improves exercise performance and the body's ability to adapt to stress. The specific active compound is called salidroside, and it has been shown in a placebo-controlled study to improve oxygen utilization during high-intensity exercise and to reduce muscle damage following resistance training. It does this through several different mechanisms that promote improved glucose utilization, mitochondrial function, and oxygen transport, as well as reducing inflammation and sparing glycogen, which is the body's carbohydrate stores that support high-intensity efforts. On a personal note, I've experimented with taking Enduro 2 before several hard, high-intensity interval conditioning days where I can actually track my output, and my pace is consistently higher after taking Enduro 2 compared to days when I don't. It's rare for a supplement to have an immediate and significant impact on performance and reduce the recovery cost of that output in terms of minimizing muscle damage, which is why Enduro 2 is such a powerful option to improve both training and game performance. I've been taking Metabolic Elite supplements for over a year now, and one of the cool things about the line is that many of the products are made using a liposomal tablet delivery system, which is just a chewable tablet. The LPT technology significantly improves the bioavailability of the supplement, or how much of the product is actually available for your body to use, and the chewable tablets are really easy to take for people that don't like swallowing pills. There's a lot of great information about Metabolic Elite's products, the LPT technology, and other important tips to help you optimize your performance on their website. So go check out metabolicelite.co. That's metabolicelite.co, and you can save 15% off all products using the code NEELD15. That's NEELD15 to save 15%. Now, please welcome Mike Potenza to the podcast. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Always love chatting with you.
You know, I want to kick things off by talking about your new role. So you're back in San Jose after spending a couple years with the Golden State Warriors, now as the director of high performance with the Sharks. Can you talk about your role now and how it differs from what you were doing previously as the head strength and conditioning coach?
Yeah. Previously it was really more performance based. I kind of wore many hats, as you know, and saw, and a lot dealt with nutrition and making sure that was all set up. Had a heavy hand in the RTP process, designed the workouts, on the floor coaching, and then that was kind of the heavy lift there. And I also oversaw our strength coaches in the American League. Now it's overseeing medical, overseeing nutrition, overseeing both teams' performance in medical departments. So rather than being in charge of 2 people at the time, now I've come back to be in charge of like 13 to 14 people, in 2 different teams, and have more conversations, I guess, deeper conversations, higher level conversations with management and the coaches. There's always been the planning piece with the coaches, but I think we've elevated that here now with Coach Warsofsky and his staff. They want to know workloads, they want to know on ice plans and the schedule. So yeah, it's been a lot. It's been still a lot of hats to wear, but different hats, if you will.
Mike, I want to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper. Feels like the staffs have grown significantly over the last decade or so. And I'm curious from your perspective, one, what has kind of fueled the perceived need to expand the staffs? And, two, this role that you're in as a director of high performance didn't really exist when you first got into the NHL. And, why do you think that role has kind of evolved now to be not just more prevalent around professional sports, but really necessary?
I think a lot goes into that. I think, like you say, we're evolving in a greatly needed space, but also a very positive way. I think general managers, I've used this adage a little bit before, but like the general managers and leadership of teams now were players who probably just got in with some of the, best of the best OG strength coaches and got that, started to train and get involved with strength and conditioning in hockey when it really broke into it, with these guys were players with training with Boyle, with Peter Twist, with, all of those names. And now it was part of their life and culture. And now they're bringing it into their teams and their team responsibility and management style. Like it's important. It's critical. So that helps with the expansion. I think we as professionals see other leagues and what they're doing and try to evolve it to a higher level to say, we need more resources, or, we're a data heavy team, so we need more, data analysts or performance scientists or things like that. On the therapy side, we see that other teams have 2 massage therapists, so they have a chiro and a PT, or 2 PTs on staff, and it really helps with the return to play process and doesn't dilute the staff and make them chase their tails and really give like only a half-ass service to the players when they're injured, because that's really critical. So I think and I think we're getting smarter in the fact that we're not banging our heads against the wall and wondering why we have headaches anymore. So it's like the coaching ratio, the therapist ratio, the athletic trainer ratio of 1 or 2 to 25. It's just, you can get by, but it's triage, and you don't want to just be triage, and you want to provide a higher level service and create a higher level program. So I think that's where we're going with it. I think you're going to see more of it, to be honest with you, but it really positive.
You've alluded to this already, but can you just kind of outline what some of the different roles and areas are that fall underneath, your umbrella, as far as like who are the Who are the people on staff, and what are their roles in certifications, qualifications, those sorts of things?
Sure. We have on the medical side, obviously we have our team doctors. They have, first stake in the claim in the game of, our injury and diagnosing it and kind of setting the path forward for us in programming, in therapy, in treatment, all those kinds of things. So that team has been in San Jose since, if I remember, 2012, I think, maybe 2013. So they've been great. And then the next layer is our athletic trainers. So we have two of them, and we also have a student that comes in from University of Pacific. So that's a great piece to have, for an intern who needs to log those hours to be able to sit for the NATA BOC. It's great to have another young professional who's climbing the ranks. Those staff members really, as you know, they'll be involved in they're involved in the day-to-day and the immediate ambulatory care of the guys on the ice if anything happens. But in the RTP cycle, they're managing the surgery, they're managing the prescriptions, they're talking to the docs, they're applying treatment modalities on a daily basis and providing any soft tissue therapy or range of motion assessment on the daily that we have for our injured guys or guys that we kind of earmark who have injury histories that we want to get a look on every day. And then on the performance side, we have our head strength coach and we have our assistant strength coach. They're programming on the daily, monitoring and tracking Catapult and Clear Sky on the daily. We kind of have a double duty for our assistant strength coach where he does a little bit of the data visualization from all of our performance scores to include the Catapult data. Nutrition-wise, we're kind of unique. We have a registered dietitian, nutrition consultant. She comes in once a month. She really sets the philosophy and the meat and potatoes of the program itself for what we want to do nutritionally. She has access to prospects all the way through the American League and obviously with the NHL team. So anybody who needs a diet designed or meal plan designed, that goes through her. And then we have a daily nutrition manager who's she's been here for 4 years now, but she started as a student at San Jose State in sports nutrition, former athlete, and now she's actually getting prepared to sit for her registered dietitian's examination. So we've kind of seen it come like full cycle, but then on the day-to-day, it's the nuances of stocking fridges, ordering, making sure we got supplies at both buildings, making sure our travel supplies are stocked and ready to go for a trip, individualizing our supplement schedule for guys, especially our daily nutrient and vitamins based on the blood work that we do. She too will help with the American League team, which is great. So they kind of have double duty, if you will. And then massage therapy, we have a full-time massage therapist. We have a massage therapist who comes in at home. The second one doesn't travel, but our first massage therapist does. He's been with us for maybe 20 years now, actually. And this could be his 20th year. And then on the physical therapy side, we have one lead physical therapist who's a great friend. I met him years ago working with other athletes in the local San Jose area and thought, we really need a solid resource for this. And he owns 4 clinics in the area now, and he's become a vital tool for us, especially in my philosophy, because that PT role and that strength conditioning role, they end up really quarterbacking the RTP process and also the daily treatment for guys who have that injury history that we want to stay on top of. This is kind of the evolution of it, Kevin. Like you said, like we're getting ready to hire another PT. I got the approval from management to hire a second. So when that second comes in, that second one will travel. Our lead PT here will stay back. And then when we're in market, we'll have 2 resources so we can spread the wealth for guys. Now, if we go on the road and the player's left back, it's just the responsibility of the second PT to update the first PT on what they got to do. So easy handoff, nothing out of the ordinary for that. Other resources that are just contracted, they're not full time. We have a chiro that's local, has an office, and she comes in 3 to 4 times a week, for a few hours. We have a gentleman who specializes in dry needling, in acupuncture, so he comes in a couple times a week as well, but we have full access to the office in San Jose, which is great. So,
but Mike, I'm curious, you mentioned that there's over a dozen people now that kind of fall under the high performance umbrella. And it seems like you guys have a really good system for introducing young professionals kind of early on into the pipeline and, allowing kind of a path for people to continue to grow. And, potentially there's an avenue there where if somebody else leaves the organization, that there's an opportunity for some of the people coming in to, potentially continue to scale their role up. And I'm sure I get a lot of questions from students and young working professionals that want to work in professional hockey or professional sports. I'm sure you get a bunch of those too. What do you look for when you're hiring people within your department? Is it, skills? Is it their experience, education, personality, character? How heavily are you weighing personal references? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of the biggest parts of my job coming back. When I came back, I had to hire 5 people, so I was like, oh, okay, this is not new, but it's really a lot more than I had to do in the past. And it was outside in different domains. I had to hire athletic trainers. I had to hire another massage therapist and PT and all that. So, and redo contracts. So your kind of performance head is put down, and you put down this, leadership management type position. It's like, okay, how am I going to go through this, and what questions am I asking, and all that. And honestly, I would say the person first in character are number one or 1A for me. If they don't, I don't care what they know. And if they don't fit, it's going to go, completely to shit. And I wasn't trying to rhyme that together, but it really is true. If you can I've seen great therapists be with teams or organizations and if they're not great people, like, it's not going to jive, So that's number 1 or 1A, and 1B is definitely I lean a lot on the personal references and where they've been, the connections, that's part of your network and why you build it during your career and as a professional. It's to be able to lean on other professionals who maybe know this type of this person who you're hiring, or have an insight as to where they were and what they did. So those are really critical for me. And number 2 is we do want them to have a strong basis of education and be able to have the competency to do the job and the role and understand the role. But they're going to learn they probably 90% of the time, they're going to learn a whole new system. For every team is unique. Every sport is unique. So all of those layers, when compounded together, like, it's going to be a whole new experience for them. They'll take what they know and apply it, but it's going to take a little bit of time, obviously, to do that. And next in line, for me, is obviously their work ethic. Is that part of, there's a lot that goes into it. Even though you have more roles, it doesn't mean you have less work, So the work ethic is going to be really key for them. That pro sports is really difficult, whether it be, especially with the travel. So you got to be, it's not a full-time job, but it's an all the time job. So you got to wrap yourself around it, and understand that's, it's going to take a lot of time, especially in the off season too. So
managing a department that has so many resources, from the nutrition, from the training, from the rehabilitation and treatment side of things. Can you talk about some of your assessments or screens that the organization uses to help identify, which areas you can best support an athlete's needs? Because I imagine, part of the process is trying to understand, what each individual athlete needs to best help them on a day-to-day basis. And it might be, different for a guy that's been in the league for 10 plus years versus a guy that's, 18 or 19 and just coming in for the first time.
Yeah. Our profiling, really, truly, if you go in order, and we review this as a staff, we review every single player, on the NHL side to know, like, what the profile of this player is. And it starts with injury history. If we have a record of what injury history they have, then everybody needs to understand and make note of that, right? Like, you can't forget about it just because it's healed, because you don't know if it's kind of completely resolved, or has it been a reoccurrence on that same side where it keeps coming back, or maybe it keeps coming back because it wasn't planned for, it wasn't programmed for. It was just kind of like, all right, it's healed, it's done, So injury is just critical. The next step in the process of intake, or what we track year to year, is range of motion. And that's from, like, toenails to fingernails, as they say, and specifically, like, ankle range of motion all the way up to cervical range of motion. I've come to believe and always thought that cervical range of motion is going to be really critical when are coming back from concussion, or if they don't have a prerequisite level of cervical rotation, that they may be vulnerable on the ice, not to kind of have this visual span or horizon type span of like, where am I on the ice? What's coming at me? What do I not see that can be, problematic? And then on the performance side, before that, baseline hip assessment, strength assessment with dynamometry with the force frame. It's ab adduction in 3 different positions. We're now getting into hip flexion, hip extension, internal and external rotation to kind of get a full hip battery. And there we're looking at outputs, but we're also looking at asymmetries. I don't look at rate of force there just for safety reasons. Like I don't need them to get on, do our warm up and then come through and then all of a sudden snap right into the actual exercise. I'm not. It's a little bit risky, it seems, for me at this moment. But then we'll go into the performance metrics, which we have jumps on the force frame. We have 1080 sprints off the ice. We'll do a 1080 assessment for sprint profiling on the ice. And then we'll do Wingate. And then we've gotten away from the VO2. I think because of COVID, we got away from it. It hasn't been brought back since. I'm kind of toying with the idea of bringing it back now that everybody can use the same mask kind of thing without any, concern. Yeah. And then part of that too is our blood work profile, our body composition profile. We'll do body composition every month with a couple times sprinkled in there with DEXA, a mobile DEXA for our guys. And then blood work is 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end. And then if anybody wants to do any advanced blood work or additional blood work in the summer and they're in San Jose, then we get that. We kind of get that done. But that's the way we kind of dig into each player, each guy. And then, the whole other piece is, okay, what do you do when you have all this information? So that's probably in a whole nother podcast, but there is a strategy for that too.
You're one of the first that I'm aware of to start integrating more comprehensive blood work into a player's screening. And, I think traditionally the population that you work with would be considered young and healthy by most medical professionals. And the level of granularity of looking at comprehensive blood panels may be viewed as not really necessary because they are young and healthy. What have you learned from looking at blood panels over the years in these athletes? And, because you're testing multiple times throughout the year, what changes do you see throughout the season?
Yeah. Great question. And I got into it, I would say I started really kind of my gateway was Inside Tracker, because I felt like, there was something to these athletes burn hot, like, they just can't replenish everything with food because you almost get tired of having to eat as much, They're healthy individuals, there's no doubt about it, but that doesn't mean they're deficient in some things, right? So Inside Tracker was my gateway in there, and then I just kind of kept doing a deep dive into it, and then that led me to our good friend Jim Laval, obviously, who we know really well, but also learned from in a lot of his education that he's provided to the NHL and in our seminars here in San Jose. And then I kind of shifted to kind of metabolic code, and then using that comprehensive platform, which is, it's blood work platform on steroids, if you will. We found I found guys, it gave me a picture of like who's deficient in what nutrients, how can I really specify rather than just throwing a daily pack out there, what additional nutrients does the player need, and then kind of like why and what can it affect, The common things that will increase in dosage are vitamin D, trace minerals, magnesium, especially for some guys, and then the omegas, right? That's pretty much the general ones that we're constantly having to tweak for guys, You see, I was surprised to see trace minerals be so low in guys. And, in consulting with Jim, he was like, yeah, well, you guys are aerobic and anaerobic animals. Like you're going to burn through, trace mineral support, energy system, performance, if you will. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. So instead of just having a daily vitamin, we have a trace mineral addition to our daily pack, for guys. And then body composition was a great kind of insight with the blood work and with our kind of food panel that we attached to that as well. So who needs whey protein, who's reactive to whey protein, and is beef protein a better resource? Is plant-based protein with additional aminos a better route? Does it help with body composition? Yes. Does it help with gas and bloating? And yeah, absolutely. So, we were able to kind of spearhead those types of problems, that kind of arose, you know. And then the other thing, Kev, is like the hormonal levels and how they change during the year. Like, what's testosterone and cortisol doing throughout the year? And if they're crushed and if they're starting off low in preseason, it's not a good thing. You want them as high as possible. As we know, we're coming off an off season, but if they're starting off low and they're just skidding throughout the rest of the year, there's a lot of concern for that, right? The dog days become the dog days of the year are the dog days of the year when January and February, when your adrenals are shot, you're highly fatigued, you're bruised and sore, and you've gone through 60 games and you still have the highest concentration of games to come. So how can we get some adaptogens, botanicals, things that are, pro recovery or pro hormone regulating into them at that point of the year, where it helps them recover a little bit more. It gives them a little bit more stamina, or it gives them a little bit more energy, if you will. Not like caffeine energy, but truly like, okay, my hormones are in check. Like I can still get through the craziness of travel and time change and late night flights and late night games. So,
yeah, I think, you hit on a couple things. One of the big take homes for me is that you can't really make assumptions about what you would find with each individual player, because you don't know if you're not looking for it. And some of the things, the markers for inflammation, some of the markers for, omegas, vitamin D, some of the other things that you reference, some guys may be fine, some guys may be deficient, some guys may be, okay, but then trending down throughout the year. And, there's a lot of value in taking a peek behind the curtain on all those players and making sure that you're supporting what they need as individuals to, not just survive the season, but to feel good and maximize their energy throughout.
Yeah. And a couple caveats too. Sorry to, I didn't think to add them in, but, when we did it the preseason, our docs looked at it, and obviously Jim looks at it, and Jim, is kind of cool to learn about your season and learn about the whole, how the year goes, if you will. Coming into the preseason, there's a taper. Obviously, every coach obviously has it, but we had some elevated kidney markers, not dangerously, but up, And Jim's like, geez, everybody's kind of elevated. I'm like, well, yeah, like we're starting at the time we took the blood, we were kind of in the middle of a 10-day, 7-day taper to lead into preseason. And then, we've been training hard, like, we're in a work capacity type phase. So would that kind of, go hand in hand? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, all right, well, let's just check, in November when we did it again, they were back down actually to normal. Testosterone was the testosterone was the shocking one early on when I started looking at it, and guys coming in pretty good for their age and then just tanking. We got like a 400 point, 300 point swing from preseason in middle of September to December 1. And I was like, man, that's not right. Like these guys are too young, but their jobs are demanding, again, burning really hot, for healthy individuals, but really, running the race car off of no gas, or just running it till the wheels fall off.
Did you just two quick follow-up questions on that? One is, what are the players that are experiencing those declines? What are they telling you that they feel as they're kind of going through that? And then the second one is, do you notice that there's any tendencies for that type of decline to be experienced more by either younger players or older players, or players whose roles may be a little less stable? In other words, the players that are fighting for jobs or, fighting for more ice time in already stressful season, and certainly a stressful work environment can become even more stressful for players in those situations. Or any trends there?
Yeah, I didn't see it as much if I look back, and I didn't see it as much with the fourth line guys, in and out of the lineup type guys, very limited minutes, and they're practicing and they're training a lot, but you kind of can control that model of what they need to do, right? Younger guys, I did see a little bit in the younger population, like our rookie guys, where they would have a downtick, but not as much, not like if they came in at 900 on a free testosterone, total testosterone score, like they would go to 700, or 750. So wasn't, I guess, too alarming. The drop is obviously, you never want to drop, but I think their biology is young enough where they can bounce back, and they're still made of plastic, so they can just keep going, just keep winding them up and go. But still benefited from kind of what we did from a protocol standpoint. And then the older guys who had a lot of minutes and years in the league, would completely be in the tank. Those were those bigger swings, right? A lot of minutes, a lot of stress, whether it be physical or whether it be mental and or media driven and things like that, and years and years and years on their bodies. And those are the guys like I wanted really to try to keep in the fight, and get them to feel really good in February and March, when we knew we didn't have like a good block of off days or an all-star break to kind of recoup energy and things like that.
You had mentioned recovery before, which I want to transition to in a minute. But before we get there, I'm curious, you spent, after, well over a decade in the NHL, you transitioned and worked in the NBA for 2 years. What were some things that you learned in your time in the NBA that, maybe has changed your approach, or that you've brought with you now in your second stint with San Jose?
There's a lot. I mean, the two things that stand out, one, I really appreciated learning or kind of having to like really focus on the different injuries, like if you had an ankle or an Achilles in hockey, because you either got cut or you took a slap shot off the ankle, you know what I mean? So, but the ligamentous and tendinous type injuries that those guys experience all the time, it made you program differently. It made you use some sort of, tendon program, which we had in every day for knee, Achilles, calf, all that, so that was awesome. That was great. I didn't see a lot of adductors at all. I didn't see, in the pathology in the back and the spine were more compressive type forces from big, massive men just pounding on a hardwood surface, rather than a rotational component from hockey players from shooting a lot, or, a kind of malaligned pelvis, and now you're trying to rotate on it, or you fall, and, the kind of the mechanisms obviously in hockey. But that was, we didn't see a lot of shoulders, but that was really cool. So understanding that and how to kind of manage those was great. I really appreciated the way, and a little bit of this was driven because they have so many numbers of additional player development coaches, and they have enough players on the roster, believe it or not, is that they created a gameplay scenario for those return to play type guys. And then the healthy scratch guys in basketball, they would also create that too. So you could simulate you could take 4 players who aren't going to play in the lineup that night, and you could take 6 or 4 other development coaches and have a game. The development coaches can still play. Like some of them are like 1-2 years removed from, high level European basketball or G League basketball. So they still have some juice. And I thought that was awesome in the fact that, okay, we have a rehabbing player, like he needs half court work, he needs full court work, he needs 3-on-3, 2-on-2 individual work, and then you can get a 5-on-5 going, and then you can plan it through Catapult with the workload and the time on court. It was great. I was like, man, we got to do this in hockey rather than the traditional touch every line, bag skate bullshit. You know what I mean? And it's hard in hockey though, but you just don't have the coaching numbers. Sometimes you don't have the coaching age that's young enough to still kind of go and play. And it's tough to get the numbers. Your roster, you only have 2 extra guys in the roster or 3 extra guys in the roster. So there's a challenge there, but very much if you can tap into it and put the effort and time in to create that environment and at least get a 3-on-3 or a 2-on-2, then that's a step in the right direction, no doubt.
Yeah, we need the assistant coaches to start dusting off their hockey bags, it sounds like.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
What about from a tendon health standpoint, Mike? Are there any, you would reference that there's some strategies that's put in place in the NBA on a basically a daily basis to help minimize risk of suffering tendon injury. Anything there that you've brought with you back to hockey as far as, minimizing risk of hip and groin strains and, injuries around the lumbopelvic area?
Yeah, I would say we're the majority of the tendon stuff that we do, is in ISO. It's in a yielding position. We don't get enough exposures to overcoming, and nor did we get it in the NBA. So those two types are present. Going into a day off, we always use kind of eccentric type work, so that it gave them time to heal. We didn't want to use any eccentric calf lowering or eccentric single leg work or eccentric knee extension. Nothing. We didn't do that going into a game. We always wanted it to be in front of a day off. Here we take the same kind of approach. But we don't use the eccentrics too much here because of the wear and tear in the hockey position, right? Or it's being low in skating. But yielding is kind of our biggest tool, if you will. And it could be for adductors, it's long lever, short lever in ISO split stance with a foot elevated to kind of get 2-for-1 on the Achilles and calf and obviously the patellofemoral joint when you're in split and foot elevated a little bit. And then hamstring would just be kind of in ISO. We've kind of used this, the supine on the ground, foot on the bench, and kind of knee at 30 or knee at 60 and just ISO kind of in holding, to get some length. Not really a big position, more of a position for running, but I think still good hamstring health that guys should have, right?
And are you implementing those strategies on a daily basis in hockey like you guys were in the NBA?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep. Steve, our head strength coach, runs all the programming. So in the beginning, we put that in we have guys who have traditionally have patellofemoral pain. We'll use some of those. Spanish squat is a big one that we'll continue to use. I think we did that 8 times a day in the NBA, and then there's great research. The NBA opened me up to a lot of other, researchers like Jill Cook and Ebony Rio and everybody who's doing that tendon health study or in their deep dive in that world. Even from a nutritional standpoint, how can you fuel with, collagen supplementation for better improvement of, tendon health. So that was big in the NBA.
I want to switch gears a bit and transition into talking about recovery. I think, obviously recovery is such a critical element in professional sports, particularly in a year like this one with a compressed game schedule. I would also say that like that space, there's never been more resources, and I would argue more distractions with the number of companies that athletes come across, through social media and even companies that just reach directly out to the players with big claims about helping with recovery. What are some of the strategies that you lean on consistently that you think have value for your players?
Number one is sleep, right? Number one, how are they sleeping at home? How are they sleeping on the road? And what goes into that? Is it the temperature of the room? Is it, hey, you got to find a specific pillow that really helps you sleep? Do you need a sound machine, or like what's your sleep environment? And are you sleeping ideally in every hotel? Because it's different, right? It can be different. That's the most natural restorative, form of recovery that we have as human beings. And if we can maximize that, great. And that goes into, do you need more sleep nutrients? How do you downregulate, from a nervous system standpoint? Do you hold on to the game until, next day and it keeps you up at night? Or, do you have other stressors that you just can't shut it off? How do we find, what tools do we have for that? I've always been kind of a big fan of the sleep nutrients and things like that, because guys are burning through all of those available nutrients and pools of nutrients during the game, so how can we support them and get them to kind of relax and downregulate through the use of nutritional products, right? The other piece that is big is hands-on massage. I think a lot of guys we find are truly benefit from that. We do a lot more post-game flush, and now than we ever have, because we have more hands to be able to do it. I still think Normatec is great if guys want to take it home or have one at home to kind of get that, lymphatic drainage and blood flow. But that's another huge tool for us. But not just after a game, but we have at least 3 days a week where we have 2 massage therapists, sometimes 3 in-house working on guys, and we give the massage therapist specifics as to what to work on the guys. But there is always that, just need a massage to kind of let the system reset, and if guys need longer, then we'll just schedule it longer, or that therapist will go to the house, so that's a massive tool for them. Hydrotherapy has always been big, post game cold tub, practice day like today for us, because we played last night, we played tomorrow. It'll be an optional for the guys today, but hot cold contrast to get blood flow and nutrients moving around. We still truly believe in that. The other piece from a recovery standpoint is we're really pro like Epsom salt, magnesium salt soak. We have a relationship with Float in San Jose, so guys can go there and use our account anytime they want, or guys can just take bags of salt home that we stock up on. Half the storeroom is all bags of salt, like recovery salt, so they can take it home and utilize it for recovery. We bring it on the road too. So as you know, the hotels are pretty good with bathtubs, so guys maximize and take advantage of that before they go to sleep. Another sneaky way to get in more magnesium too, to help them recover, sleep, take care of any sorenesses in their joints or whatever have you. Red light therapy, we partnered with Kala with our new remodel. We have a recovery room, to be honest with you. Kala is the big sponsor of the room. So we have red light boards in there that guys can stand in front of. We have a male and a female coaches change room that red light boards are in there too for more privacy. So we have 3 stations of red light. We have Kala's provided PEMF mats to us, which guys have taken home and used for sleep prior. They've been amazing. In that room, we'll have Normatex. In that room, we have 2 shift wave chairs, and the shift wave chair is unique in the fact that there's sensors on the back of the chair that kind of helps blood flow and cerebral spinal flow, right, to help recovery and nervous system downregulation. But the cool part is it's really a guided meditation that helps you breathe, and that helps downregulate you. Guys have used it after games and found it to be really helpful with cutting like at least an hour of wake time after a game out. So it gets them to sleep sooner. There's other programs too in it, like if you need to kind of do a warm up or a mental focus or a nap in the middle of the day, you can lay on it for a while. Some guys have used it. A lot of staff members have used it for that purpose. That's in that room as well. PEMF mats or just laying around it to help recovery at the cellular level. We have that as well. So that's just laying down in the chair, and then there's a huge box of PEMF, and then there's a coil that you lay on, which in my research and kind of looking into it is a very effective tool. Also from an injury standpoint. So we have a specific unit that's for injuries too, whether you get a contusion or whether you have a break or whether you have a tendon ligamentous type injury, so it's pretty, or a tearing in the muscle. So
yeah, I think
that was a big download. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. You had mentioned sleep. I think, one of the things that's been interesting to learn over the years is just how different players respond to sleeping at home versus sleeping on the road, which you alluded to. There's certain players that really prefer their bed and their setup at home and they sleep way better there. And there's others, whether it's, the environment, whether it's because they have pets in the house or their, young children are waking them up, that they sleep way better on the road. And, we obviously were very fortunate to stay at very nice hotels around the league, but all the mattresses are different. And, we kind of joke that there's some five-star hotel injuries that come in when you lay in a really soft bed or a bed with really soft pillows. The guys that, have a history of back and neck stiffness, that's going to flare up on them. So, kind of interesting to hear you talk about changing the resources for the players in those different situations.
Yeah. And I think we started doing this when you and I worked together here, but like the coaches too have to look at, like, performance coaches have to look at your schedule too. Like, we're unique, like we'll practice at 11 o'clock at home, and then, day after a game, where we used to do this. But the guys went to bed at 2 a.m, but we haven't changed the practice time to adjust for that, and on a regular practice day, they're going to bed at a normal time. So that fits with an 11 o'clock practice, but going to bed at 3 doesn't fit with the 11 o'clock practice and closing the sleep hours window. And we have our daily questionnaire kind of alluded to that. Guys sleep better on the road, and they sleep better on the road because our practice time is automatically at 1 o'clock and as the visiting team. So it's like, yeah, you get extra sleep just because of that. So it's like, okay, why can't we mimic that at home? And we definitely do that since I've been back. I've always pushed for it kind of when we figured it out, and coaches were pretty good about it. But now our head coach is all about it. He's like, it makes total sense. Why not? Why not? Which is good. Sometimes you got to remind them like, yeah, this is too early of a practice. So let's push it back. The NBA, I thought the Warriors coaching staff and the performance and health and performance department really nailed it too with the Warriors team, in the fact that like, if we got into a city and it was a certain hour time change, like, and we weren't going to do a shoot around, then let them sleep in. The meeting is going to be at 11, and we'll do a warm up and mobility session before, so that they go into the meeting kind of woken up a little bit, but they didn't really have, they always favored the side of sleep, especially when we changed time zones, everything was pushed back, because we knew that their bodies would be on the previous time zone or Pacific time, right?
Sure. I in professional sports with the schedule, I think full recovery is a moving target on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
What are some of the strategies that you guys use if a player comes in and on a game day and just, doesn't feel like they have their legs or doesn't feel mentally sharp? Are there things that you've leaned on that you think can really help in those scenarios?
Yeah. There's the physical piece of like, okay, like let's address mobility, stiffness. Let's address any of those kind of like parking brakes that could be on that are making you stiff, and let's address those first and foremost, and get you kind of like in a position to do a good neural warm up where you're actually awake. There's that piece of it physically, and then there's the other piece of it where, can we change that direction with some sort of supplementation, right? Like, can we not caffeinate them with, just come up with the big jug of Monster and energy and just pump them full of it. But, focus wise, like in terms of what we use, like Metabolic Elite we've used a Synapsin Pro has been our go-to for guys who have to clear the fog out, need to be a little bit more alert on a practice day, or even our pregame formula, is Enduro 2 and then our Synapsin, right? So it allows us to get some sort of cardiovascular effect with recovery, aerobic and anaerobic through the rhodiola. And then the Synapsin Pro gives us that clarity and cognition benefit that we want guys to go into a game with, that alertness, And again, it's not a stimulant by any means, it's not when it's not driven through caffeine, it's driven through clearing the fog up in the brain and making sure the cells are not contributing to the fog or contributing to the delay in the processing. So those are the two big things. I don't, and in practice days, we truly drive both, but definitely the physical piece, the mobility piece.
I just have one more question for you, but just to comment on that quickly, I think there's so many different strategies that for different purposes, whether it's preparation, whether it's, kind of lumped in that recovery umbrella, or, in the aspect of the conversation and trying to get guys, into a better spot on a game day that require the player to do something, to go through these exercises or these training strategies or use these recovery modalities. And, I think that's where supplements can be really powerful. The ones that are proven effective, that you're not asking the player to do one more thing. It's, not that everything is kind of a magic pill and an easy fix, but in the case of that Synapsin Pro that you mentioned, that's a pretty easy ask to add into a player's repertoire to have them feel better on a game day.
Yeah, and it's chewable too. So like, we have a daily packet that's specified for each guy. We have daily packets if the coaches just want to come through or staff wants to come through and grab one. But our daily packet's really specific to the guy's blood work, right? And then we have an immunity packet for those times a year that we feel like, okay, we're kind of exposed, like, case in point. This is a prime example, like everybody's kids on the team and half our team has kids, right? And the staff have kids. So they're going to come off for Christmas break and they're going to hang out at home, and the germ pool like spreads out. They've built immunity around themselves. They spread out, and then they're going to come back in January, and then everybody's going to get sick again. You know what I mean? So, or right now you're going to have family that's coming into town from a different germ pool, and everybody's going to start getting sick. So my point is, like, we have a lot of daily packets to grab on the go, and guys get pill fatigue. So the chewable side of it has been a good relief. And I saw that in the NBA too, with early iterations of metabolic elite products that are LPTs, which is great. Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to run by you, Mike, every year San Jose is one of the teams that covers the most miles in the air in the league. Are there any things that you lean on either in flight or post flight to help players feel good, when they land in the new city?
Yeah. Yeah, like I was turned on to kind of little things like a sleep hoodie. I'm a big garments fan, like I think they're super effective. So every player gets travel socks. Every player gets travel compression pants. I was turned on to a hoodie out of Boston actually, and it's cooling material. It's a hoodie. It's got a mask, and it's got kind of the mask has the ability to drown out some noise, so you can get in this little cocoon safe place to like rest and sleep on the plane. Guys actually really liked it. They kind of felt like, they were again in that cocoon and they could relax on the plane. So there's that piece that we'll definitely do. A lot of what we do too, Kev, is to make sure we're not disrupting their sleep and their kind of acclimation to the time zone at the extremes. Like we try to identify at the beginning of the year, look at the whole schedule, and then even monthly, like recheck it. Look at the schedule to say, hey, we've had a couple of these, but we're going from Philly to Toronto, and it's cold out, and it's going to snow, and we got to de-ice. And before you know it, like you're grabbing your room key in the lobby at 3:30, in the same time zone, and you're completely screwed, and you have a 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock practice the next day. Like even that's not enough, but you can't change practice because you're locked into the ice time because there's another event in the building or whatever have you, So we tried really to kind of like we're going to utilize more of like, let's just stay in the city. Like, what are we rushing to? If we need to skate, we can skate in the city we just played in. If we really need to skate, then we can do a later skate in the next city, So those disruptive patterns late at night, we try to avoid them as like the plague, Pretty much if it's an hour and a half, if it's an hour flight, we're going to fly no matter what. But if it's more than that, and if it's 2 time zones, let's not do it,
Mike, this has been awesome. If people want to reach out and connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, my Metabolic Elite email is the best. It's mike@metabolicelite.co. So you can talk everything from sharks to training to Metabolic Elite products that we have a passion for, and that we're excited to obviously build that company with all of us that are involved together. So
cool, awesome, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me.